We're back. It's Thursday evening, Thursday night, Thursday morning. It could be any day, it could be any hour, but welcome to the SevereMMA UFC preview show. And today I'm joined by our favorite Canadian son, as I like to call him, Spencer Kai, and Sean Denny himself. We'll have a couple of late stragglers that are coming in as well by means of Sean Sheehan, and I believe Harry will be joining us too. Before we get into the nitty gritty of the UFC fight night, or I guess, yeah, it's UFC Vegas 50. It's crazy to think we've 50 shows in the Apex now. My goodness, that's mental. Before we get into it, I want to remind everybody of our sponsors, All Real Nutrition Bars. The Spencer is pointing them out there. You're going to see them flashing across my screen just right now. Get those into your bellies. They're delicious protein bars. Head on over to eatallreal.com and enter the code word SevereMMA and get yourself 15% off All Real Nutrition Bars. Eatallreal.com. And as the great Harry Paul joins us here, we go and we're going to talk about the main event tonight. Or tomorrow on Saturday night. I'm all over the place. Sorry, guys. That's Thiago Santos versus Magomed Ankalaev in the light heavyweight division. Marlon versus Yudong in the co-main event. Pretty decent card all in all, guys. I'm pretty excited for this one. I'm excited for the main event. You know, I've been a big fan of Magomed Ankalaev for a while now. I know Harry is as well. I know he's won Sean over this week as well. I'm sure Sean will be coming in too. And let's just talk in general about the main event. And I'll go to you first, Spencer. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. I think, you know, Thiago Santos is a guy who hasn't looked himself since the injury, since he hurt his two knees. You know, he came in and fought well against Johnny Walker the last time out. But I mean, this seems to me that this could be a coming out party for Ankalaev. A guy who I'm really high on. I mean, what's your thoughts on first Thiago Santos, and maybe that we can talk about Ankalaev next?
So Thiago Santos, I talked to him on Wednesday afternoon. Talked about other things that you just mentioned. Talked about the long road back from after the fight with John Jones. Absolutely shredded his left knee. Tore meniscus in his right knee. Pair of surgeries. It was well over a year between fights before he came back and fought Glover Teixeira. You know, he lost to the current champion there. Then he has the fight with Alexander Rakic, which is sort of, you know, a prelude almost to the Johnny Walker fight where there's not a lot of action. Alexander Rakic went from being a super aggressive, super interesting guy to kind of fighting a little more dialed back and a little more cautious these days. But got a good win against Johnny Walker, and it wasn't the firefight that we expected. Asked him about it, and he said, look, that dude's crazy. And you have to be careful. And I was waiting for him to come in and be crazy Johnny Walker. And he just chose not to. Like, it's not that I don't want to knock people out. I miss it. And he legitimately said, I miss it, in that way that, like, when you say you miss somebody you haven't seen in a long time. And I asked him to clarify it and explain it a little bit. And he was just like, I don't have any words. Like, I'm a striker and I like knocking people out, and I haven't done it in a while, and I miss it. And so I would be surprised if we don't see a little bit more aggression out of him this weekend, but that's dangerous because, as I'm sure everybody else is going to rightfully say, Magomed Ankalaev is a big, big problem, and a big problem everywhere, in every realm, in every way, and you have to be careful with him. So yeah, if there's a fight for him to be a little bit cautious, this might be it.
Yeah, like, I mean, I know I said that Santos, he hasn't looked the same, but I would have to admit, you know, in that last fight against Johnny Walker, Spencer, he did open up a little bit as the fight went on, and we did get to see some flashes of that power throughout that fight. You know, as you said, excellently so. I think that might not be the best plan here, coming in against a guy like Ankalaev. And you know, would you agree with that, Harry?
I would, if I could unmute myself in time. Hello, gents. Nice to see you. Okay, so I completely agree. I think I went and watched a couple of fights back for Ankalaev to try and get some reads on how he's going to perform against Santos. And I thought that I've done it again, haven't I, lads? I've done it again. All right, lads, let's try this again, shall we?
Beautiful.
You can now fucking hear me. Here we are, professional Harry. We're doing it again. Yeah, look, I went back and I watched a couple of fights from Ankalaev and to try and get a gauge on what I thought was going to happen here. And the two fights I went back and watched were Nikita Krylov and Volkan Ozdemir, right? The reason for that is both, relatively proficient on the feet and Krylov has a little bit of grappling. The thing that stood out to me the most in both of those matchups were Ankalaev is really, really dangerous when somebody's chasing him around the ring. Krylov refused to do that, and Ankalaev had to push the pace. And by doing that, Krylov was able to land lots and lots of body shots. When I was rewatching the stream, I saw Shawnee Judges mentioning that Ankalaev was not landing the immediate strikes immediately impactful strikes in the first round, but Krylov absolutely was, and Ankalaev changed his game plan and managed to get the win that night. But against Volkan Ozdemir, who was more than happy to walk him down, he just got picked off left, right, and center, right? And I think Thiago Santos is a man with that sort of Muay Thai style that's going to be really happy to walk Ankalaev down, and by doing that, the footwork I think is going to be a big problem. The stance that he chooses is almost like a wave of the sea, right? He like bobs forward and leans back, and he's deceptively eating up and taking away range without people thinking about it. The front kicks on both legs and the lead hook I think is massive. And the other thing I think that was huge in the fight for Ankalaev against Krylov specifically is he didn't respect the power of Krylov. He just chose not to respect it and just carried on forward. Now, that's going to be a danger against Thiago Santos because that man's got hammers for hands, right? Hammers.
Absolutely. Sorry, you caught me off guard there. Yeah, like you mentioned there, Harry, with Ankalaev, something that I noticed with Ankalaev was that lead overhand that he possessed. It was the one that cut Volkan Ozdemir. The danger with that and what he tries to do with that lead overhand, I think, is to try and guide guys into his straight left. And that straight left knockdown of Volkan Ozdemir in that fight as well. And, those are two dangerous weapons that Ankalaev has. And I guess with Thiago Santos in this fight, he is going to have to tread carefully in moving forward with those powerful strikes if he is going to not get countered with those. And I just don't see him not getting hit with either one of those strikes in this fight. But Sean Sheehan, I'll go to you. A self-proclaimed non-Ankalaev fan until this week. I mean, what changed your opinion? I mean, you weren't not his fan, but you weren't his biggest fan, shall we say?
It's just, I hope my mic is okay. Am I sounding okay? Am I too loud or am I all right? I just plugged in my my preamp there, but I look okay on my levels there anyway. So, what I basically did this week was watch a few of his fights, to be honest. And look, so you have to do a lot. I've said it. Who was I talking about? I was talking about someone else this week, and maybe it was Jalen Turner. And he's a guy who last week stood out, And you have to do a lot these days to stand out in MMA. And just for me, Ankalaev was one of the guys. Okay, when you're in the light heavyweight division, you win a few fights and you look good. You stand out on the night, but for me, I don't know why. I don't know why. And for Harry and for Spencer and for other people, he is a name that stand out, and he's a name that you kind of remember the second you remember. It's just for me, he wasn't for some reason. Now, that doesn't mean he's not a good fighter, but I went back and I watched him and I absolutely understand what the lads were talking about. I think his straight shots are absolutely beautiful. He's power down the middle. What I like about fighters like Ankalaev is that usually in the higher weight classes, lads rely on different sort of things to get them through, whether it's their one big move, or whether it's their one big power shot, or whether it's, your wrestling, or whether it's your jab, maybe not necessarily always a jab. But, it feels to me like Ankalaev is one of the guys who's very, very good fundamentally all around, and that's what makes him good. And in divisions like that, I think fundamentals are more important. I think, Ian, you asked me on this live stream last week about about athleticism and why it's so big in the heavyweight division, the light heavyweight division as well. And I think the reason it is so big is because if you kind of have the fundamentals with it as well, it will set you apart so much. And I think the fundamentals themselves set you apart so much. The one thing I do think that Ankalaev does lack a little bit is extremely top level athleticism. Now he's athletic, and when you know, maybe Harry and Spencer will be able to talk, and the rest of you will be able to talk more on this than me, because I'm by no means an expert in him. I just went back and watched a few rounds this week, but to me he looks a little bit like he's it's not that he's slow, but maybe his fast twitch muscles aren't as fast as some other, like I think of a Jamahal Hill, as you would call him, and even Anthony Smith at times and others in that division. I feel like he is more of an intelligent fighter, not to say the other two aren't, but his intelligence is what makes him great, along with his basic fundamental ability, which can make a great fighter. I think John Jones was actually similar enough. Now, John Jones is a very good athlete as well, one of the greatest we've ever seen. But his intelligence with his fundamental brilliance in the jab and the oblique kick he throws and the high kick with his left leg that he constantly throws. If you look at John Jones and break him down, he is a very just fundamentally sound fighter. There isn't anything mad. You'd hardly ever see John Jones doing a mad technique. Now you might see him doing something unorthodox with submissions and things like that, because he's like a blue belt and he doesn't know what he's doing, and he just kind of winging it a little bit. But yeah, that to me is what I see when I watch Ankalaev, a very good fundamentally sound fighter, a fighter which if he was at a lower weight class in a different division, he wouldn't be half as effective as he is. But the fact that in that division and even the division above it, there aren't that many fighters like him, or that many fighters with his ability. He shines in a different sort of way, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you're saying about athleticism, but he has super quick, fast hands, which I was surprised to see. Like, I mean, it was quicker than his last couple of opponents anyway. So, Sean, Denny, what's your assessment on Ankalaev?
Versatility. I think he's just got more sort of ribbons than anybody. Well, 99% of the division. So he's able to turn into a chameleon based on whoever he faces. If you want to come forward, he'll counter strike. If you don't want to come forward, he'll go on the offensive. If he's fearing anything on the feet, he'll push up against the cage. He'll take you down. Like, he isn't the quickest in the world, but the versatility just gets him everywhere. So his ability to change it up, regardless of the opponent, there's not too many people in the light heavyweights with a plan B, and he's got plan C, plan D. So when A fails, he can keep going through his progressions until he eventually finds a way to win.
If I may as well, I think one of the most impressive things about him is patience. And I don't mean patience as in he's going to be on the outside, he's going to be waiting, he is unflustered in a firefight. He can stand in the pocket, and instead of just winging shots because he's in a firefight, he's picking shots in a firefight. Now that to me is ultra impressive. It was happening against Krylov. Like, Krylov was backed up slightly. He'd throw some wild exchanges, and Ankalaev would get clipped by some, but was reading as they come, and he's throwing the correct counters. He's making sure knees are there. He's making sure he's firing on the way out. He's making sure he makes the reads what's happening in those firefights, and rolling and ducking out of the situations and going out the side corners. And like, his ability to make reads and be patient is something that really, really stands out to me. And I think the fight IQ is great. There are some holes in it, and if we want to talk about the holes, I've got some notes for that. But I think generally, the thing that sets me apart is I think both of the Seans, Team Sean, absolutely nailed it, right? There's intelligence there. There's intelligence and there's depth of game plans. And there's just not much of that at 205.
Spencer, do you think that Ankalaev's kind of confidence in his wrestling lets him open up a lot on the feet, and is that kind of a new breed of fighter that we're seeing lately? I would also say that Peter Yan is confident in his wrestling, which maybe gives him more time to work on the striking, and I feel that there's a new breed of striker and a new breed of fighter coming through with these Russian guys who have that base in wrestling.
Yeah, I think so, and I think it's what Sean Denny was saying of, he has plan B and C and D. And so he can be completely comfortable, as the three gentlemen before me all said. He's comfortable no matter what is happening, no matter where this goes. And so he's that guy that's able to adjust to everybody. And that's been the piece for me that has stood out. Even going back and watching the Paul Craig fight, he dominates that fight all the way up until Paul Craig catches that triangle at the end. And it's just one of those things. And if he holds on for one more second, I think we're talking about him in very different terms. It's interesting to me that one loss has changed the way a lot of people kind of perceive him, because you just see the loss and you see it's Paul Craig, who is starting to come on a little bit, but hasn't had a, super run in the division yet. And I think that makes people detract from him a little bit. He had the 2-fight series with Cutelaba that detracts from it a little bit because he's stuck chasing him around all of 2020. But he's just that guy that has every single answer every time out. And as Harry said, there are holes, there are weaknesses, there are pieces that are still need to be refined a little more. But when you can go to plan B seamlessly, and then C if you need to, and then D if you really need to, in a division where it usually only takes 3 or 4 wins to get noticed, this would be number 8. And so when you get to number 8, it's time to just say that, there may not be the blistering knockouts like Jamal Hill is putting up. There may not be the sound bites that we're getting from some other guys in other divisions. But if you get to 8, give the man the title shot. He's clearly earned it. He's clearly a guy that we all have to be aware of and have to recognize for his sublime talent, as you said, a guy that's part of this incoming generation, incoming new wave of fighters.
Indeed. Just to go back on the Paul Craig fight, if I do remember, he was pretty much winning all of that fight until he got caught at the end as well. Harry, you talked about Ankalaev's holes in his game. Tell me about them.
Absolutely. So some of his greatest strengths, he has layers to his offenses, right? So everything starts with the lead. The lead side, whether that's a counter right hook, whether that's the jab, or whether that's the lead front kick. One of the things that seems to be a hole for me is his lead leg is constantly moving. And he gets into sort of a rhythm with that lead leg. It's constantly up off the floor, whether he's chambering it for a teep or whether he's just hanging it out in the ether to sort of feint for a teep. If I'm Thiago Santos, I'm either trying to catch that early or I'm trying to kick it early. The other thing he does is his left hand generally drops slightly lower or slightly higher than his chin. In the Krylov fight, he got caught with a couple of head kicks and a ton of body kicks. And Thiago Santos is more than happy to bang that body or bang that head, right? He has good kicks. So I think low kicks and far side body kicks and far side head kicks are definitely weapons that Ankalaev is weak to. And in the same vein, although he has that patience in the firefight, he has that patience and he's happy to be in those firefights. I'm not sure against some of the more elite 205ers, you're going to want to be in that firefight, right? I don't think I'd want to stand in the pocket with a Jamal Hill or frankly with a Thiago Santos. I don't think that's a sensible thing at all. It's all well and good making reads in the pocket, but if Thiago Santos cracks you, you may not have a chance to make the reads, right? You might just be waking up staring at the lights. So I think for Ankalaev, respect is a big thing. It's a big thing in his game that he refuses to respect some people, and that may well be his downfall. But yeah, I think there are some interesting weaknesses, and I'll be very interested to see if Thiago Santos can make those reads early and try and punish them.
Sean Sheehan, do you think the leg kick from Santos is going to be a major player in this fight?
Not really. I don't think. Maybe look, if he can land them and continuously land them, absolutely they could. I find it hard to envision this fight going for Santos, to be honest. Now, as Harry said earlier on, he has massive power and he can hit anyone that needs to be hit. But I think the difference between this fight and the Johnny Walker fight against Thiago Santos, which was very close. A lot of people thought Johnny Walker won that fight. It was whoever you thought won it. There was no doubt about it that it was close. I think that Ankalaev is happier and more used to playing that game that Johnny Walker tried to play in that. Now, I thought Johnny Walker actually did pretty well for a guy who completely changed up his game and tried to fight in a different way. We saw him coming back to try to fight his old game, but it didn't go so well for him against Sol Hill. but that's the game Ankalaev wants to play. So is Thiago Santos going to try to change things up? Like, my thing about Thiago Santos is sometimes you have a fight in your career and it fundamentally changes you. Like, and that John Jones fight is one of them. But what's the reason for it? The reason for it is he came very close to beating John Jones, fighting a certain way, but also he fucked up both of his knees in that fight. So like, he fought well fighting that way. And fighting that way is actually probably a bit easier on your now shitty knees compared to the way you used to fight, where you're going forward. Now, he wasn't just a guy who's come out and throwing big bombs or throwing big leg kicks. He's a good fighter always, but I think he's kind of fallen in love with fighting that way, and I think he'll try to fight that way against Ankalaev, and I think Ankalaev will just win it. Like, I think this one will go long. I think it's going to be 4 to 5 rounds, and I don't see a way that Thiago Santos can win it apart from landing that big shot. But in fairness now, though, as well, having said it, your question was about the leg kicks. Can he land those leg kicks? If he does land 3 or 4 big leg kicks around, and if he does land one big shot around, if he does hurt him once, 3 or 4 times throughout the fight, he could win a decision. All it takes is a few shots in 3 rounds, and you've won a decision. So I do think it's going to be a tit for tat fight, and there won't be much in it. So I normally I'd say maybe, I said at the start they wouldn't be a big factor, but maybe they will. Maybe they will. But I do think it'll be a technical, tactical fight, and I just see Ankalaev winning that. I really do. But we've known, and we have we should know by now though not to rule Thiago Santos out. Everyone ruled him out against John Jones, and look, okay, he didn't win, but very, very close fight, and he's a very, very good fighter. And maybe, I said he's bad knees now, but maybe the fact that it is a few years out from him, he's had 2 fights back, maybe the knees are somewhat back to normal, and maybe he will be a little bit better. But I would favor Ankalaev bigly in this fight, to quote the second last president. Roosevelt Roberts.
As would I. I think Ankalaev's been light on his feet, and I guarantee he's going to be quicker than Santos coming in here as well. Santos needs to take the spring out of his step. Sean, Denny, how do you see the fight going overall yourself?
Like, a single mistake at light heavyweight is enough to end it, but I don't see Ankalaev making a mistake, so I can see this going to decision. Ankalaev win.
100%. Harry, break down the fight and how you think it's going to go.
Well, I'm going to quote a pretty famous man: "Timing beats speed, and speed beats power." Right. So I think to Shawnee's point, I actually agree that Ankalaev isn't the quickest. He isn't the most athletic, but I think his ability to make reads is going to be far, far, far too superior in this fight. In the in the Uzdemir fight, Uzdemir throws some mad spinning back kick, and Ankalaev sees it from 60 million miles away, jumps in, takes him down, and it's just. It's not. It was Krylov. No, it was Krylov, and it wasn't fun for Krylov at all. Like, Krylov was trying butterfly, and Ankalaev was just body lock passing him over and over and over again. I think that I will always err on the side of the fighter that has more options. I can't see Thiago Santos shooting takedowns. However, I can definitely see Ankalaev mixing it up if he feels he needs to, even if it's just to open up things on the feet. The man with more tools generally wins, and I think Shawnee Podcasts sort of hit the nail on the head that if you're going to try and outplay Ankalaev at his own game, it's going to be a long night. Now, of course, Santos has every ability to land a big shot in the pocket, and make no mistake, if Ankalaev sticks around in that pocket like he has with other fighters, he will get clipped by somebody. It may not be Thiago Santos, but it's going to be somebody, and that's something he needs to fix. But with that being the way that we're picking this fight to go, I can't see anything but an Ankalaev shutout, to be honest.
Yeah, big time. Spencer, would you agree with those sentiments from Harry? How do you see the fight going down?
I do tend to agree. I think if Thiago Santos is going to get a victory here, it's early. It's first 2 rounds. As Harry said, land something big that shakes Magomed Ankalaev and doesn't give him that opportunity to recover, because the longer this goes, the more time that Thiago Santos is stuck in there dealing with wrestling, dealing with pressure, dealing with the shots that are coming his way, the more it just starts piling up and favoring Magomed Ankalaev, and he gets to the point where he just starts pulling away. So I think it can be close and competitive early. And then the longer we get into this, the more we start seeing Ankalaev pull away and really distance himself.
Big time. I know, Sean, you kind of alluded to it as well. I think I would agree with what everybody has said. A long run Ankalaev victory. I think he might bring in the takedowns in the latter stages of the round. You looking at an Ankalaev decision here, Sean Sheehan?
Yes.
There you go. Get your dick jokes ready, folks, because the co-main event is Marlon Moraes versus Song Yudong in the bantamweight division, and this is an absolute barn burner of a fight between two crackers. I mean, Marlon Moraes hasn't had the best run of luck lately. It looks like his chin is fading a little bit, and you don't want to be coming in here against a guy like Song Yudong with a faded chin. Harry, break this fight down for me.
Is it a barn burner though? Like, is it? Is it really?
Or is it that Song Yudong's... It will be for the first round until Moraes gets clipped, and then it'll be all over.
I mean, and essentially, I think that's how I'm going to break down the fight, right? Moraes has a very nice, wide, long stance. His hands are nice. He has big, huge power. He's like a mini Edson Barbosa if Edson Barbosa was a bit shitter. You know what I mean? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like that, you know? But I think
we went all in on Edson last, and he let us down last weekend.
He did, yeah.
Don't mention that his name.
Yeah.
We got Kevin Holland back, though. It's all right. We got Kevin
Holland. Fucking Kevin Holland. But here, look, I think the thing for me with Moraes is it feels as though the UFC know that he's done, and they're now feeding him to fellas to build the name off him. And Song Yudong has absolutely monstrous power in all of his legs and all of his hands, right? Thank you, Sean Denny. The only fucking one to get that joke. Jesus. But I think if I'm Marlon Moraes, I'm going to try and force some grappling exchanges. And I'm going to try and force some grappling exchanges early. I know it's not necessarily a strong suit, but I'm going to try and force Song Yudong to think about something more than just hands. Because if you do and you get into a straight striking battle, I think Song Yudong is going to find that chin, and when he does, it's going to be a very, very early night for Marlon Moraes.
Big time. Spencer Kite, Song Yudong is a rising prospect in the bantamweight division. I couldn't help myself. He's a rising prospect in the bantamweight division, real dangerous, and I think he has a good shot here at beating Moraes and putting his name on the map in the bantamweight division.
I think so too. I think he's a guy that we don't talk about enough. Like, he's one of those guys that's interesting to me that for all the attention we pay to bantamweight, and rightfully so, I think it's the most competitive, most interesting division in the UFC right now. How we're not talking more about a guy that's 24 years old, has already got 7 wins in that division, and 7 like good wins. Even if you want to, and if you want to do the like, well, he didn't really beat Chito Vera, then the draw with Cody Stamen should have been a loss. So maybe he should be, what would that be? 6-2 instead of 7-1-1. Okay, well, he's 24 and he's 6-2 in the bantamweight division. And the guys that have given him a test are guys that have been top 15 staples for a while. So like, that's a guy to me that I don't understand why people aren't more excited about him, given the amount of excitement that gets directed towards other people in the division with Technicolor hairdos. And so I think this is a moment for him to go out. And I know I've said it on Keyboard Kimura this week, and I say it again here for everybody listening. There are going to be people that instantly make this about the decline of Marlon Moraes when Song Yudong goes out and absolutely obliterates him. And they just say, well, look at what Moraes. This is going to be about Song Yudong. Yes, Marlon Moraes is fading, but we've seen fading veterans hang around and stick around against guys that should beat them or maybe aren't quite ready to beat them. The really good prospects and the really true talents go out and put guys like Marlon Moraes away in fights like this. And I think that's what we see on Saturday. And I agree with Harry that it's going to be ugly and it's going to be great to watch.
Sean Sheehan, at 24 years of age, should we be talking about Song Yudong as an exceptional talent?
Yeah, we should. Yeah, he is very, very good. Like, the dick jokes do kind of get in the way though at times, you know. When we were watching it live, and I'm barely watching the fights, I'm trying to come up with the next dick joke, like, you know. And that's not a joke in what I'm saying here. It actually does. It's weird. Sometimes you get distracted from the fighters, and it takes away. And you know, look, we talked about Colby a couple of weeks ago, and the same thing kind of happens with him because of all, you know, his antics and his persona and all this. His actual fighting ability, we rarely talk about it because it's all about the persona. And obviously Song is on a different sort of level in terms of that, and he's still, you know, on his way up. It's just, you can't divide it, but you know what I mean. He hasn't got to the level. He isn't as big a dick as Colby, let's put it that way. So I think as he, you know, climbs the ranks, we will talk more about him. On Moraes, though, just quickly, that last fight against Dashvili nearly knocked him out. Like, he nearly won that fight. And that was only, September last year. And it was his last fight out. I know he hasn't been losing scrubs. I'm just looking here. He lost to Cejudo. He beat Aldo. Very, very close fight. Obviously, a lot of people thought it could have gone the other way. But I thought it was, you know, it was definitely 50-50. Lost to Sandhagen, Font, and Dashvili. You know, two of the contenders in division, and one of the guys who you could talk about being the next contender maybe this time next year or something like that. So it's not like he's losing to scrubs. I think Marlon Moraes was a fighter who was a little bit like, you know, Conor McGregor at times as well. Once he's ahead, he's a very good fighter that's ahead. But when he gets behind, it's going to be tougher. And it was actually, I think he's on another level compared to Conor McGregor in that, even because he was fighting a lower level of fighter in World Series of Fighting and destroying them. And he had his part of his prime there against guys who are, you know, he fought some good guys there, don't get me wrong. But then he comes into the UFC. Obviously, he does very well. You know, I think he lost his first fight, but he beat some good guys. You know, he beat Aljamain, he beat John Dodson. He lost his first fight to Asuncao. But there's no shame in that, especially at that time when he came back and he won that fight against Asuncao again. But I do agree he's fading, and I do agree he's a fading force, but he's also dangerous. You know, and we're talking about this being a firefight, and Harry said it won't be a firefight, and I tend to agree it won't be a firefight for long. You know, but will it be Yudong finishing him at the end of the first round, or maybe at the start of the second round, or halfway through the second round? Or will it be Marlon Moraes catching him with a big knee or a big head kick or a big punch in the first 90 seconds? I actually wouldn't rule that out whatsoever. You know, a lot of people try to rule that out against Dashvili as well. And I remember talking about it a time ago, don't rule him out against Dashvili. Okay, he ended up losing at the end, but he only lost at the end because Dashvili came through an absolute fucking storm. So
do you think, Sean, there might be a chance you see more of a reserved Marlon Moraes after getting knocked out 3 times in a row? Probably not. It's not in his bones.
It's not in his nature. No, it's just not in his nature. And against Yudong as well, like, Yudong's a good wrestler as well. He's a good takedown defense, and he's good everywhere, good grappler. He's training with Uriah Faber as well, isn't he? And like, Uriah was a very good, you know, sprawl and brawl type of fighter in a defensive way anyway, and obviously himself with his guillotines and his wrestling stuff as well. And he will be, if Moraes goes for a few takedowns, I think Yudong will do a good job of stopping him. But the thing about Moraes is, right, if he does try to fight a more reserved game, all it takes is one mistake, and if the chin isn't there, he's going to get knocked out anyway. So kind of what's the point, you know? And it's if you're Alistair Overeem, right, fighting in the heavyweight division where lads throw 3 punches around, okay, you can do that, you know? Or if you're Andrei Arlovsky, you can fight a more reserved game, protect your chin, elongate your career. At bantamweight, fighting against guys like Yudong, fighting against guys like fucking Corey Sandhagen, that's not possible. Now, I don't think Yudong is in their level, to be honest, of those last few guys I named. Not yet, anyway. So maybe this fight would be a good fight to do it, but I don't think so. I think he'll be a little bit safer early, but I do think he will come out, try to land his shots. We look for the big shot, and if the opening is there, he'll take it. I'm not fully on the Yudong bandwagon for this fight anyway. I think he's a very good fighter, and I think he's a future, you know, top 5 or top 10 maybe contender in the world. But I wouldn't. If you picked Moraes to win this fight, I wouldn't call you an idiot, to be honest. Now, I probably will pick Song to win it, but I don't think it's as cut and dry. Look, if you ask me 3 minutes into the fight, I might have a different answer for you. But right now, I don't think Moraes is without a chance.
We all wish we could see 3 minutes into the future fights to give our opinion, because we'd look like geniuses, I'd say. But Sean, Denny, how do you see the fight going down?
Yeah, so Song Yudong has done a lot of living in those 24 years. He's had, what was it, 25 fights? And so he's learned a lot of lessons. So he's sort of like a veteran in a youthful body that won't that's not as broken down as Maurice will be. Like Maurice has just looked limp recently in the last 5 fights. He's probably lost them all. Don't really count the Aldo one. Um, but yeah, he's still dangerous. They are good opponents that he lost to. But I still think Song will rise to attention. He'll get the win done, hook or by crook.
Indeed, Harry, you're shaking your head. What are you thinking, my friend?
Denny made another dick joke. Look, I think Shawnee Podcast is right at the end of the day. Like, Maurice is absolutely, he's still got 2 hands, he's still got 2 legs, and he's still got a brain, right? He can absolutely throw. I think to the point of, is he going to be in a more reserved? I don't think that's really going to be his choice, to be honest, right? If I'm Song Yudong and I'm Uriah Faber that's game planning for this, my game plan is just put it on him early and let's see if he wilts. He always wilts. Let's fucking put it on him. And at that point, if you pressure him and if he's up against the fence, he's going to look for that big shot. And if he looks for that big shot, I would pick Song Yudong 9 times out of 10 to land the counter and put him away. I think that at the end of the day, and I'm going to do my best to not make a dick joke here, I think that the smart choice is Song Yudong, but always somebody of Marlon Moraes' veteranship and somebody of his ability, there's always a chance you can land a shot. But I think Denny hit the nail on the head that Song Yudong's a young veteran in a body that's not a veteran. And I think that's a really dangerous combination. All he needs now is the truly high-level fight experience. And we'll either see him prosper or he won't. But I do think that Marlon Moraes is on the decline. And I think that Song Yudong by first or second round finish is probably what I'll go for.
Indeed. So we'll move on to the next fight, which is Bruce Leroy, Alex Casiris versus Sodiq Cusiff. Casiris on a hell of a run recently. Cusiff lost to Arnold Allen in his last fight. Spencer, how do you see this fight going down?
I'm really interested to see it because I wrote about it today and I called it a renaissance and then kind of doubled back right away and was like, well, you have to have had a first part that was really great for this to be a renaissance for Alex Casiris. And he was just inconsistent for a long time. And now he's on a nice run. And I didn't really believe it until the last fight when he got kneed in the head, came back, and still submitted Sung Woo Choi. I think this should be a fight that Sodiq Cusiff wins. He's just a so much better fundamental striker. He will be attacking that lead leg very early and very often as long as Alex Casiris has it out there for him. Great hands. We saw that all the way back to his Contender Series fight against Mike Davis, who was a big favorite in that fight. We even saw moments of it in the fight with Arnold Allen. I just think he's a better fighter. But I'm so interested to see if this Alex Casiris piece is real, because he was always somebody that had talent, and he was always somebody that had pieces that you liked, or that I liked at least. And now that he's starting to, it's like he's finally gotten to the point where he's poised and figured out, well, I can do all the things that everybody thought I could do. And so with Sodiq Cusiff having been off for a year now since that Arnold Allen fight, with Bruce Leroy on a nice little run, I think it's going to be more competitive than maybe some people think, but I still think it's a fight that favors Sodiq Cusiff.
Indeed. I tend to agree with you, Spencer. As we move over to Sean Denny, you know, you've got to see these fights. These guys go at it a good few times now. Sean Denny, how do you see this fight going down? Do you think this is a coming of age of Casiris? How do you feel about this fight?
I think it's going to be a lot of fun. You never know what you're going to get with Bruce Leroy. He's going to try some spinny stuff. You might get some scrambles. So wherever this goes, I think it's going to be fun. But I think if he stands up with Sodiq Cusiff, he might be in for a short night. Cusiff is so explosive, got such a big hands on him. I think if Casiris is going to have any joy here, he's going to have to take it down, try to take the back, go for the submission. I think that's his path to victory here. I think if he stays up standing for too long, Cusiff is going to build in confidence and he'll eventually clip him. But I'm like Spencer, can't wait to see if Bruce Leroy is the truth. There was a while there where he was sort of like the 50-50 record, which is dreaded in the UFC, where you almost become like a joke type thing. But he's after coming through that strong now, and the record looks much better now. But yeah, this is his biggest test in a long while. So it'll be interesting to see if he passes it.
Harry, how can Bruce Leroy use his grappling in this fight to be successful?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting question, because for me, the most interesting thing is how Bruce's style, sort of the flowy, very gangly, very sort of wayward, the complete opposite style really to Sodiq Yusuff, who's very tight, very compact. I think that's going to be really interesting to see how Sodiq plays it. And I understand you've asked about the grappling aspect, and I think the reason why I'm going down what Sodiq is going to do, because Bruce Leroy's feinting game, just the way he stands, the way he moves, the steps he makes, isn't a conventional way of fighting, right? So if Sodiq hasn't maybe game planned as well, and Alex Casiris does some things in there that he's not necessarily expecting, you can absolutely see open cage wrestling. You can absolutely see some missteps from Sodiq Yusuff, and maybe he backs himself slightly against the cage, and if Bruce Leroy is able to get on him and wear him down and fill those arms with a bit of lactic acid and get him to the ground, well, then we're in for a very interesting fight. I think one thing, if I could just add, and I'll pass it back to you after this, is the question I have on Casiris and Sodiq Yusuff is sort of the strength of schedule in the last little while. Sodiq Yusuff has been fighting very good fighters sort of all the way through before he got to the UFC and since he's been in the UFC. Alex Casiris has had to take a few steps back, right? And this is no disrespect to the guys that he's fought most recently, but they're not of the same level that Sodiq Yusuff and Arnold Allen were in. And I thought that the Arnold Allen-Sodiq Yusuff fight was fantastic because everyone was talking about how Sodiq was going to go in there and put a statement on Arnold Allen. And actually what happened was Double A showed the levels that he's now gotten to. And I think that fight was more about Arnold than it was about Sodiq, right? So make no mistake that Sodiq Yusuff is coming in here and should have taken from that fight that actually he's still a very, very solid fighter. But you're right that the grappling exchanges are going to be very interesting to see how Casiris sets them up and how successful he is when he gets there.
Because Casiris is going to have a strength disadvantage in this fight.
100%. 100%. Like the frame that he has, the range frame, is very gangly, and it's great for things like guillotines and darces and anacondas and getting under the neck. But to make those things effective, you have to get into dominant positions, right? And that's the key. That's the big question for me, is how does he get there? How does he manage the footwork battle? How does he manage the strength disadvantage? How does he manage, I think, the speed disadvantage as well, if I'm honest? How does he bridge that gap to force Yusuff into grappling exchanges?
Sean Sheehan, how does he do it? Or does he do it at all? How do you see this fight going down?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting fight. Like, funny enough, myself and you, Ian, we have a Heist Gracie podcast coming out talking about jiu-jitsu. Myself and Harry were discussing it last night between podcasts, talking about, and Harry's talking about the jiu-jitsu, and obviously you asked him about the jiu-jitsu game as well. How does Alex Casiris turn this into a jiu-jitsu battle if he can? Because maybe that is the way he wins the fight. And like, I've talked about jiu-jitsu an awful lot over the last few years and say how it isn't as effective in MMA today as it has been. And, I've made jokes and I've taken shots at lads like Harry and, Andrew McGahan and people like that who love the jiu-jitsu just for the laugh. But jiu-jitsu can be effective if you can make it effective. I think a big problem with jiu-jitsu and people who have an advantage in jiu-jitsu is that they don't get the fight to the area where they can make use of that advantage. And I feel like if Alex Casiris can do that, like I'm not saying go out there and go full Heist Gracie and jump and front leg kick him and pull guard and things, but find ways. Be like Verdum is a great example to me throughout the years. Like he'd take one punch, he'd get hit like that, next week down the ground, and he'd be waiting for you to come down and top him, and he'd sweep you or he'd fucking triangle you like he did with Fedor. Be smart about it, really. I really think people need to be smart about it. Okay, if you look at the likes of Kron or Ryan Hall or something, maybe they're too smart about it, but I don't know. I would just love if someone found, like, I'm a big fan of jiu-jitsu, and you know, myself and Harry were talking about it last night. I bet you he could attest to it now after doing that. But I used to watch a lot of jiu-jitsu and enjoy consuming it, and love when there's a big submission, or love when there's something we haven't seen before. And I would love to see more of that. And maybe that's off topic a little bit for this. And you know, Alex Casiris isn't fucking Cron Gracie, or you know, he got submitted by Cron Gracie, if I'm not mistaken, didn't he? But from his point of view, that's what I would love to see, and from other people's point of view. And this fight specifically, look, I remember the last time we talked about Sadiq Cusiff, and Spencer was talking about him, and you know, having spoken to him and things, and saying if he could get that extra 10%, he could be a top fighter. I was doing something, or just maybe it was myself and Harry discussing Kamaru Usman last night for a second. Remember that fight he came out where he said, "Oh, I was only fighting at 75% or whatever it was," you know? And everyone was like, what
30%.
Yeah, I don't know, whatever it was anyway. I feel like Cusiff is like that a little bit. I feel like there is so much more in him to get out. And maybe this Alex Casiris fight is a good fight, because he's a guy who will stand there, and if you go at him, he will go back at you, but in like a in a nice way, if you want to put it like that, you know? And I think this is unless Alex Casiris can get the fight into a jiu-jitsu battle, and even then I'm not sure, because I'm not sure about Sadiq Cusiff's jiu-jitsu. But other than that, I think it's a great matchup for Sadiq Cusiff. And I'm a big fan of Alex Casiris. I actually think he's a good fighter. I like, you know, he's a funny guy, and he's vegan, and he loves his jiu-jitsu, and he's, you know, he's one of those lads, you know. But I respect it, and I appreciate what he does. But I just think this is a blow-away for Sadiq Cusiff, honestly. And if he doesn't win this, and if he doesn't win it well, honestly, it's hard to see a fight that he will win well. That's hard to say, unless he makes some big changes, because he needs to get the finish here. It's such a good matchup for him. I think he needs to get the finish.
On the jiu-jitsu topic, if I can just jump in, regardless of how much of a scumbag he is, Sadiq Cusiff trains with Lloyd Irvin, and that man can grapple, and that man can teach grappling. So make no mistake that Sadiq Cusiff will not be a slouch on the ground.
Spencer, do you see it any other way than a complete blowout for Sadiq Cusiff in this fight?
I mean, I can see Casiris having moments where he does kind of create some scrambles, where he does create a little bit of chaos, a little bit of uncertainty with things. But he's also one of those guys that you're going to know pretty soon if his head's in it, and if his head's not in it, it's going to be absolute one-way traffic. If he's locked in, if he comes in like the guy we've seen the last 4 or 5 fights, then this is going to be more competitive than I think people think, because he's been really good, and it hasn't been against great opposition, as has been said. But I do think there's a little bit of, you know, the veteran rising up, and probably a little bit of doubt in Sadiq Cusiff after that Arnold Allen fight, where he was supposed to come in and run through the Almighty One. And so I think it's going to be a little more competitive, but Alex Casiris could always venture back to being Alex Casiris at any point, and like the clock strikes 12, and suddenly he's back to being the guy that we used to know back in the day as being super inconsistent.
Indeed. Harry, I'll bring you in for the next fight between Khalil Roundtree and Cara Robertson. Look, we've seen Khalil Roundtree absolutely destroy the leg of Modestas Bukauskas in his last fight. A nasty knockout. If anyone hasn't seen that, you should check it out. How do you see this fight going?
It's a striker's dream, really, isn't it? It's a striker's dream. I think this is going to be... They're quite similar in a way, but I think Khalil Roundtree has gone... He went out to Thailand. He sort of reinvented his whole style, reinvented himself, found his chakras and all that bullshit. And now, you know, he's come in and he looks like a totally different fighter. He stands in a different way. He manages his cardio in a different way. He's investing in different strikes. He's investing in different styles. Cole Robertson is, in my mind, sort of a standard kickboxer. And I don't mean that in any disrespect either. You know, so we're going to see a clash of the sort of the MMA Muay Thai and then a kickboxing type Muay Thai. And I love it. I really do love it. I think Modestas Bukauskas is somebody that was slightly underrated and quite poorly matched, right? Somebody that was very good on the Cage Warriors scene and came in and had some real tough fights in the UFC, and you know, it went the way it went. But the dominance that Khalil Roundtree had in that fight was a big standout to me. And I think when you are able to dominate somebody like that, we talk to fighters all the time and they tell us that confidence is a massive thing. Well, Khalil Roundtree is coming in here supremely confident. And I mean, really, I don't have much of a read than that. I just think it's going to be a great stand-up war, and I'll be really interested to see how it goes, you know?
Indeed. I mean, if anyone else has anything to add there, feel free, but I'd like to move on to the next fight for time. We're under a lot of time constraints here, but the next one is it's an absolute belter of a fight. It's a fight that came together at short notice, Spencer, and that's Drew Dauber versus Terence McKinney.
Absolutely love it. Love the fact that Terence McKinney raised his hand. He put out, I think it was Christmas Eve, and I think he's tweeted about it again very recently. Drew Dauber kind of put out who would you like to see me fight in 2022? And Terence McKinney said Terence McKinney. And now he's getting that opportunity. I love this for him. Roll the dice. Why not, right? It's on a nice winning streak, 5 straight first-round finishes, 2-0 in the UFC, got a win 2 weeks ago. Take your chance. There's nothing for him to lose here and everything for him to gain. I think he has the potential to be a factor in this division. Down the road a little bit, he needs a little bit more experience. But everyone I've ever talked to about this guy, and that includes former training partners and guys like Mike Chiesa, who was his high school wrestling coach at one point, has said his grappling is even better than his striking. And you've seen what he's done on the feet. We saw a little bit of the grappling last time out against Fares Zaim. I think we'll see kind of a more complete fight this time around. And this is a big test. This is a big step up, but I love this opportunity for him. All the power to this kid for raising his hands and jumping in there to take this fight against Drew Dauber, who started last year in the top 15. If you can go out and beat this dude on short notice, it tells us where you stand in this division.
Indeed, I would have to agree with that. I'm wondering if you agree with that too, Sean. You'd have to give Terence McKinney all the respect in the world to go in there against a guy like Drew Dauber. It's the right thing to do at this stage in his career, even if he does go out there and lose.
I'll tell you a funny story about Terence McKinney. Right? When you work for Sherdog or work for Tapology, I'm sure Quilcha or other people will tell you, you often get like coaches or fighters in your DMs or your email saying, "Here, can you change my Sherdog? Can you change my Tapology?" Anyway, and funny enough, I had Terence McKinney in my DMs looking to change something in his Sherdog, right? And it was only something small. It wasn't a fight or wasn't anything big or anything. And I was like, yeah, no bother, and I got it fixed. I was like, oh, I must have get you on for a chat before the next fight. And that was grand. I put down my phone and I played a game of FIFA or something, picked up my phone. It was like Terence McKinney versus Drew Dauber. That's why I was like 10 minutes later, he was fighting Drew Dauber. I was like, will I text him over now? I was like, okay, it might be a bit cheeky. But that's how quickly this came together, right? Honestly, I think it came together like that quickly. And as Spencer said there, why not? Why not take it? Like this, he said, I saw him putting up something on Twitter the other day. And he said, like, I think I'll be a champion by what year? 2023, in 2023. And he goes, look, I might even be quicker than that now, the way things are going. And why not dream? Why not go that way? Myself and Harry actually did a podcast kind of about this last night about, and it'll be out in a couple of weeks over in Speaker's Corner. But like this, we were talking about lads like promoting themselves as well as being like good fighters, as well as taking care of their career. But the best way to promote yourself sometimes is go in there, take tough fights against tough guys and win them. That's the way I run them. And I think this is a very tough fight, and Drew Dauber is very good. Like, I haven't got a massive sense of how good Terence McKinney is because we haven't seen much of him in the UFC. And he isn't the guy, because last week we had, Bellator Dublin, and I didn't spend a whole lot of time going back looking at his last fight. And he came in and he won like in 8 seconds the fight before that. So I haven't seen loads of him, but I've seen him, I follow him online and things like that. And he seems like a funny guy. And from what I have seen, he seems like a fantastic fighter. But when we will see it, we'll see it this fucking Saturday night, because you don't go in there against Drew Dauber and win if you're not a very, very good fighter. And you don't go in there against Drew Dauber and be competitive if you're not a very, very good fighter, because this guy's an animal. We talk about speed, we talk about athleticism. Drew Dauber has all of that. He really has. And if he was in any other division, Drew Dauber is championship level, like genuinely. Like I think that much of him. Like if you look at his results over the last while, the only guys he's lost, Riddell in a relatively close fight, if I'm gone mad, but Makachev, Dariush, and look, Oban Mercia back in 2016. So he's beat Josh Berkman, John Tuck, Nazrat Hakparas, Alex Perez, and now McKinney he's fighting this weekend as well. So he's fought, the guys at that level who are kind of trying to get into the top 15. And as Spencer said, he got into that top 15. unluckily for him at that time, was fucking Islam Makhachev, probably ranked 14 at the time. And, you know, sometimes you catch Tim breaks and you're back to 16 very, very quickly. But he is a damn good fighter. And I'll tell you what, if Terence McKinney wins this, he deserves to be ranked. He deserves to be right up there, and he deserves to be getting someone, maybe not the Makhachev level, maybe he is the next Makhachev, you know, and maybe he is the guy that will get the 14, and some poor fucker who's at 15 will have to fight Terence McKinney. And, you know, maybe Drew Dauber's that poor fucker this weekend. We'll find out.
Absolutely. Is it too much too soon, Sean Denny, for Terence McKinney, especially coming in here at short notice?
Potentially. Drew Dauber is a very, very tough man. And if you stand around with him for too long, he's got the power. He's got the power to knock you out. So if you make a slight mistake against him, invariably he'll make you pay. He is beatable though. I don't know if he's beatable very quickly, like we've seen Terence McKinney's previous opponents. So I think I'm excited for this one because I think we're going to have to see Terence McKinney use a bit of game planning, and picking his moments. And like Drew Dauber's seen every style of opponent. He's been there, done that, bought the t-shirt. He's got loads of big wins. It's going to be so tough. But Terence McKinney, confidence. Half the battle is just getting in there and doing it. So why not? Why not get the win while he's in there?
For sure. Harry, how do you see the fight going down?
I can't really say much more than what the lads have said, really. I think it's very close. I think Sean podcast made a great point of we don't know what Terence McKinney can bring in because we've not seen enough, right? When we see him go 3 rounds, when we see him go 2.5 rounds, we'll have a bit more of an understanding of where everything is in his game. It's kind of a shame in some ways that he's gone out and just blown lads out of the water because he's talking on the mic about my grappling's better. Mike Chiesa is backing it up. He's banging people out left, right, and center. It's like we want to see that, right? Like we want to see that, especially as analysts, especially as people that really watch the sport to see it. We want to see that. And the lads have made a great point. Drew Dauber doesn't go anywhere on purpose, right? The Makhachev fight, look, these things just happen. Do you know what I mean? There's not a lot you're going to fucking do. But I think if I'm Terence McKinney and if my grappling is at a level where it's better than my striking and I feel like I'm banging lads out left, right, and center, why not test that takedown defense, right? Why not see, has Drew Dauber, like if I'm Terence McKinney, I'm like, okay, so he's just gone out and got whacked by grappling against Islam Makhachev. Well, I've got all this hype behind my hands and I'm telling people I'm better at my grappling. Why don't I see if Drew Dauber's confidence is resolved in the grappling area? Let me go and try. Let me go and touch those knees and see what happens. So, I mean, if I'm Terence McKinney, a short notice fight, he's going to be still relatively in shape. He's riding high in confidence. It's going to be a good fight.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be interesting, and we'll see how Terence McKinney does in that fight. We'll deep dive into one more fight, and we'll go maybe to Spencer's undercard fight of the night. I don't think we could have had this preview without talking about Alex Pereira against Bruno Silva, another Brazilian battle in the middleweight division. Spencer, tell me about what you think of Alex Pereira's chances in the middleweight division. People are talking him up as Izzy's next greatest challenger. I don't really see it yet, but what a phenomenal striker he is.
He is, and this for me is going to be sort of the fight where we figure out a little bit more if he is a guy that's going to be a challenger for Izzy. Sean hates middleweight. I'm starting to move to Sean's side of things more and more as we see more and more middleweight fights. This to me is one of those ones like Alex Pereira came out, or it was released earlier this week, did a podcast with Guillermo Cruz over at MMA Fighting, and he's saying that Israel Adesanya is scared to fight me. If this guy really wanted to fight me, he would be pushing people. He would be moving mountains to fight me. And it's like, dude, maybe just wait till you beat Bruno Silva, because like Bruno Silva could come out here and knock you into next week. Because that dude, we've seen it so far in his 3 UFC fights, right? 3 finishes. He was getting absolutely beaten up by Andrew Sanchez, who isn't great. God love him. Hell of a guy. Not great. Harry's upset. I'm sorry, Harry. I don't mean to bother you. Hell of a grappler. Really nice kid, too. Beating him up, and Bruno Silva clocks him in it, and we're done. We're done here. Same with the Wellington Turman fight. One shot, done. We're going home. There's nothing to say that Bruno Silva doesn't do that to Alex Pereira and turn all of that talk about Israel Adesanya into kind of the stuff Alex Hernandez was saying before his fight with Moicano, where it's like, I can't believe the disrespect I'm getting treated. And then somebody's going to go out and punch you in the mouth. And so we're going to find out on Saturday if this dude really should be talking about Izzy, or if he should just be shutting up and getting some experience, because he's only got six MMA fights, and only 2 of them in the last like 4 years. Go handle your business. Show us that you're close to that level, because you're not going to be there after beating Bruno Silva. There's still, middleweight's terrible, as Sean will tell us shortly, but there's still steps you have to take before you can start talking about the undisputed reigning champion.
Yeah, for real. I think, he has a long way to go from what I've seen so far. Obviously, it's great to watch him strike, but there's going to be plenty of challenges, and one right in front of him on Saturday night in Bruno Silva. Sean, what's your opinions on this fight? Sean Sheehan.
Well, I looked at I was doing my betting show, and I didn't really look at a lot at Bruno Silva, and I've seen him before, as Spencer alluded to there. I looked at his record, and he has 28 fights, and if you look at how many wins he has by submission, I think it tells you who's going to win this fight. And that the amount of wins by submission, 0. So I would probably pick Alex Pereira. I think win this fight. You never know what's going to happen in MMA. But if I was like, I saw it in Bruno Silva, I was like, oh look, is this guy? Maybe he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt or something. Maybe he's like 15 wins by submission. And I would absolutely have been picking him then, because the last time Pereira nearly got submitted. Remember in that last fight, and then he came out and knocked the lad out, whoever the fuck it was. That's fair play to him. I Pereira actually impressed me a little bit in that fight, because he doesn't have good takedown defense, and he doesn't necessarily have good jiu-jitsu or any wrestling or grappling, but he was very good defensively. Like, he stopped himself from getting submitted very well, for the bit we thought. Now, maybe if he'd got him down in the second round, maybe it would have been a little bit different, but he did well there. Now, if he goes in there against Andre Muniz or someone like that, maybe it'd be a little bit different. Shout out to the one middleweight who's worth the shit. Maybe it'd be a little bit different, but this weekend, I'm not sure. Actually, just before I send it back to Ian, see the QR code up there. Click it. That'll take you straight to our Patreon. Sign up, patreon.com/SevereMMA podcast. You just click that, take a picture of it, get your phone out there if you're watching on your laptop, and sign up for Patreon. Ian.
Absolutely majestic. Sean Sheehan pulling some wizardry out during this pre-show. Unbelievable.
I hope it works.
Harry, break down this fight for me. I mean, it's set up for Pereira. They want the next challenger. There's history there with Izzy, but I feel he has a long way to go and many hurdles to get over before he gets that opportunity.
Yeah, look, it's a fucking layup, innit? It's a fucking layup. And let's make no bones about it. Something that a wise Sean Sheehan once said is, you just got to tell it like it is, right? And this is exactly what's fucking happening. We're coming in here, and the UFC is giving your man a striker that won't, I mean, if he's got any fight IQ between his ears, he's going to try and grapple. But if he's going to come in here and he's going to try and strike with him, he's going to get whacked. It's probably another flying knee. We've got 2 highlight reels. They're going to do it again. And when he's 5 fights deep, they're going to feed him to somebody like Rob Wilkinson. He'll whack him as well. And then there's going to be talks of title matches and title fights, right? Like, this sort of matchmaking doesn't hold any water with me, really. Something that's been talked about a lot in SevereMMA is that we see the best fighters fight the best when they are the best. This isn't that, right? This isn't competitive matchmaking. Now, don't get me wrong. Bruno Silva might go in there and might be like, fuck this Pereira guy, I'm going to double leg him into next week. And if we do see that, I hope so, because fuck the UFC for this kind of matchmaking. But I really can't see it. I think, Jesus, I've really sounded off on this, haven't I? I think Alex Pereira is an absolutely unbelievable striker, and I'm really pleased to have him in the UFC. But I'm really pleased to have him in MMA. But you can't come into the UFC and just think that you can flying knee people into next week, because it will not work. And easy matchmaking isn't going to help you in the long run. He has to play the hard road. He has to learn the skills he needs in order to function at an elite level. If he wants to go in against Izzy now, Izzy will grapple him and will submit him without a shadow of a doubt. So in the way I think this fight goes is I think Pereira whacks him, but I'd love to see him just have to deal with some grappling exchanges. That's what I'd like to see.
Indeed. Like, I think I'd be nearly confident in saying that we're never going to see Alex Pereira versus Izzy in a fight in the octagon. I just can't see it at all. And I mean, you know, UFC are trying to build a star. They're trying to get him up there, but he's going to have to fight an elite guy eventually, and he's going to end up getting found out. Spencer, I'm going to bring it to you, my man. I'm going to let you give us your undercard fight of the night, or a couple of undercards fight of the night if you want to, man. The floor's here. Sean is only looking for the one.
Saying only one, so I'm going to be really cheeky and really quick. I love the final prelim, Matthew Semmelsberger, AJ Fletcher. Both explosive guys. Semi got 2 wins last year in a combined 31 seconds. AJ Fletcher is built like a fire hydrant, trains with Dustin Poirier and Alan Joban and some guys down in Louisiana, and is just a fantastic finisher. I love the flyweight fights for the women. Really interested to see JJ Aldrich and Jillian Robertson together. Love that matchup in terms of the style clash. Really interested to see what Miranda Maverick does after 2 losses. Thought she beat Macy Barber, but the fight against Erin Blanchfield went absolutely not the way she expected it to go. It went the way I expected it to go. And I want to see where her confidence is at. She's at Elevation now in Colorado. I think this is her second full camp with them. I think that'll make some changes and bring her up. And then I'm just always a sucker for like weird fights. Like the actual pick for me is Trevin Giles versus Javid Basharat, because Trevin Giles has a lot of tools and is a dude that, like, people are talking about Javid Basharat coming in here. He's the favorite.
Don't fucking sleep on this guy. Don't sleep on him.
Tell me about him, because I'm suspect right now. Because
all right, lads, because
the guys that he's fought, when you go back and look at who he's beaten, it's a whole pile. It's a whole collection of ass.
Absolutely. So Javid Basharat is one of 2 brothers, him and Farid Basharat. They started, I believe, they're either Iraqi or Iranian, but don't quote me on that. They came over to London. They trained at London Shoot Fighters, and between the 2 of them and Amir Albazi, they basically created the stable for lighter weight fighters in London Shoot. There was a disagreement between themselves and the gym, and they decided to move and train somewhere else. But in wrestling rounds and grappling rounds, I've heard some very interesting stories about how these 2 lads do against the bigger guys. And there are some excellent grapplers out of London Shoot Fighters, you know, not Venom Page, but there are some good grapplers out of London Shoot Fighters, and these boys are doing very, very well there. The fights that they took specifically in their earlier moments of their career were, cans, right? The cans. But make no mistake about it, these guys are legit. They are very, very good. How he deals, I think Trevin Giles is a really tough matchup for his debut in the UFC, a really tough matchup. But Basharat has lots and lots of skills. And something that we've talked about previously under the podcast is that grappling at the moment is the dominant skill to keep you standing or taking you to the ground. And Basharat can grapple. So I'd be very, very interested to see how this fight goes.
I was told once by someone, if you see someone with a name like Javid Basharat and they're fighting out of London Shoe Fighters and you've never seen them before, put your fucking week's wages on them.
Yeah.
Because how many lads have we seen? Like, even Modestas Bukowskis we named earlier on, he's fighting out Norbert Navinyi Jr. To me, this guy, and I know he's dealing with ACL at the moment, I think this guy is the best young fighter in the world. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I think he's that fucking good.
I've heard some stories, lads. I've heard some stories.
Yeah, I didn't realize who it was until it was up there, but I have to put in that 2 cents. I've known nothing about him, never seen him fight, but I'll be going for him anyway.
I was already interested. Now I'm even more interested with the Harry Powell stamp of approval.
He's a fighter. That's for sure.
Put the fucking house on it, lads. That's what we said. Javid Basharat. It hasn't gone well when we put the house on fighters before, but this is what we're doing. We're going with it. I'm going to let you finish off, Sean. What's your fight of the night going to be, Sean Sheehan?
My fight of the night. Hold on, let me pull up the card here. Dauber McKinney, probably. I like that fight. Like, there isn't a standout amazing fight in this, but there are a lot of fights, right? I think Cusiff Casiris won't be an amazing fight, but something could turn it into an amazing fight, if you get me. I think the same, like McKinney Dauber, I'm not sure it'll be an amazing fight, but it could be an amazing fight. And I think the same even for the main event and lots of the fights. Joe Spencer kind of mentioned it in passing there, but I really want to talk about JJ Aldrich versus Jillian Robertson for a second, because I think that's a fantastic fight. Like, JJ Aldrich is the type of fighter I love. You know, okay, she isn't blessed, God bless her, with the biggest power or anything in the world, but she tries to fight the right way. And I love that in a fighter, you know, and she's someone who doesn't have all the physical attributes, as I said, or you know, the power, but she does things the right way and she wins fights because of it. And she, you know, she's 10-4 in her career. And maybe someone with her athletic ability, and that shouldn't be that good. Jillian Robertson, on the other hand, you know, she's not, you know, Kayla Harrison or Ronda Rousey or anything like that, but she's a little bit of a better athlete, a better, not necessarily a better grappler, but I think she will try to take JLJ down if JLJ lands a few jabs and things on her like that. I think that's a very intriguing matchup. Look, I think it'll probably go to a decision. I think it'll be a close one. I was looking at the bet and I went for it to go to a decision. I think it's plus 100 to go to a decision, which I think is a pretty good bet, to be honest. But that's if you're looking for the Sean Sheen undercard fight of the night, which doesn't really mean much compared to Spencer's one. But that'd be my one. I think Dashal Langiambula was pretty good, and he's or pretty entertaining anyway in one of his recent fights. He's fighting Cody Brundage, and Tafon and Chukwi is one of those guys as well that you kind of have to tune into, I think, when he's on the card. But yeah, it's pretty good. It's a big weekend as well. I don't know if you're going to wear somewhere. Maybe we could talk about the two main events in Eagle FC and Bellator as well briefly, if anyone's not in a rush. But it's a big weekend for the world of MMA as well.
Yeah, I'm not in any rush at all. I mean, just to talk about the UFC undercard, a shout out to Chris Moutinho, who was in there against Sean O'Malley in his last fight, put on a good fight until he got finished. But he's going in there against Guido Canetti. So I'm looking forward to seeing him moves forward, not afraid to throw ones and not afraid to take a few slaps as well. Sean, lead us through what you want to talk about Eagle FC this weekend.
Yeah, Eagle FC. Yeah, so there's the biggest fight in that to me, or the best fight in that to me, is Ricky Bandeas versus Ray Borg. I think that's a really, really good fight. But Kevin Lee versus Diego Sanchez in the main event, it's like I feel like it's just going to be a destruction for Kevin Lee. Myself and Harry briefly talked about it last night as well. And you know, I'm going full jiu-jitsu this weekend, but I'm like, if Diego Sanchez could turn into a jiu-jitsu match, I think he could possibly win that, but I don't think it's going to happen. I just think Kevin Lee is going to bash him up on the feet, probably make him bleed, and probably finish him in the latter half of that fight. But there are some good guys as well on that. Look, we have to mention as well, I mentioned it on my preview I did on Sherdog, and I talked about it with Philip O'Connor as well over on Patreon today about the war in Russia, and obviously it's Russian owned, Russian back. We see Russian people getting banned all over the world. Like, will people even be watching this card? Will people want to tune in? I think that's something you have to maybe decide for yourself, because myself and Phil talked about it for an hour and we still didn't get an answer. So it's one of those things I don't think there is an answer out there for. But Khabib owns the promotion. We've seen him with Putin before. We've seen him with Kadyrov before, and those guys are murderous fucking warmonger strongmen right now. So if it's your if it's your one to not want to watch that card and not want to do whatever you want with that card, absolutely, it is your right to do that. But look, I still think as MMA media members and as MMA journalists, those fighters deserve the coverage, and they deserve to be talked about, and they deserve to have their fights broken down from the technical point of view. And obviously, I've done that, and we can do that. But anyone else have an opinion on that, or what are your thoughts on it?
Well, number one, I think that podcast you did with Phil, Sean, was excellent. I mean, it laid everything out perfectly in the current situation, and also how we should and how we shouldn't feel about different. Like, I mean, it's a confusing time for somebody. You know, you want to condemn it, and at the same time, you know, there's a lot of guys out there that want nothing to do with it or don't support it. And then you're kind of looking at it, should all people be painted with the same brush? There's more than one war going on right now. There's more than one country doing some bad stuff. But I mean, I think in certain aspects, it's important to separate entertainment from politics and real life, and look at if you don't want to look at that card, don't look at the card. But if you want to separate yourself from reality and enjoy some good mixed martial arts fights, well, there's nothing wrong with that either, in my opinion.
It's almost impossible to separate it from this stuff. You know, it's almost impossible. When it's, you know, I think Bloody Elbow wrote an article about where the money is coming from, and you know, Ali Abdelaziz cushying up with the likes of Kadyrov, bringing over numerous fighters for numerous years, and he's there sitting cage side. And, you know, Habib is the front man for this. Like, is Habib paying Kevin Lee $250,000 to fight on Saturday night or whenever it is, whatever the amount of money is? I think you'd be a fool if you believe that, to be honest. But what do you think, Spencer?
I mean, I think you're right. I think it's so difficult to separate these things, and for me, this is a card that as you said, the Ray Borg, Ricky Bandeas fight, great fight. That's the only one I'm really, truly interested in. There are some other people on here that are prospects that, I'll keep an eye on peripherally. For me, this is like, saw a couple of things this morning as they weighed in, and, thank God Kevin Lee didn't have to make a torturous weight cut. Here's the truth. Kevin Lee could fight at 55 if Kevin Lee wanted to fight at 55. It's just about being professional. He's not some gigantic lightweight. He's 5'9", 5'10". He's made 55 plenty in the past. He just doesn't want to make that cut. He just doesn't want to do all the things that it takes for him to do to be a lightweight at the highest level. He is a guy, to me, that has always gone out there kind of in that Kevin Holland mode of tell everybody how great I am and then can't back it up. We remember before the last fight, right? The fight with Daniel Rodriguez where D-Rod tags in late. He's out there saying, I'm top 5 welterweight already. I'm the best grappler in this division. Khabib was ducking me. And to his credit, he was calling for Khabib. He was calling for Islam Makhachev when nobody else was. But do you know what loses you all of those points is when you go out and say, I'm top 5 in the division, and then you get pieced up by Daniel Rodriguez, who is a very talented fighter and a very skilled fighter, but not a guy that's running around out here saying, I'm top 15 even. And so for me, this is like, people are going to make a big deal about Kevin Lee probably getting a belt in this division. And he's the face of the super lightweight division, which has exactly him and Diego Sanchez right now. And so it's hard for me to get super excited about it. The fact that it's Diego Sanchez, I think we all agree Diego probably should have retired 3 or 4 years ago, if not just 3 or 4 fights ago. And so it's, with everything else that's tied into this, it makes it really hard for me to give a lot of concern to this card this weekend.
I think as well in that if you are Kevin Lee, I think you need to beat Diego Sanchez and beat him well, because how long is that promotion going to last?
Oh my God, could you imagine?
Yeah, imagine if he loses to Diego Sanchez and Habib says, thanks for the cheese, good luck. This is the last time we're ever promoting this. Where is he going to go to? Bellator didn't even want him before he went to Eagle FC. I don't think the UFC are going to want him back. So it's interesting.
And his little brother's in Bellator. They didn't even want to bring him in to have him on a card with his little brother.
His brother's in AEW, I thought, isn't he? Keith Lee, is Shawnee, what do you think? Anything stand out for you? Any of the lads from your part of the world on this, or even on the Bellator undercard, which we'll get to in a second?
Just to roll back a little bit, like I think when it comes to choosing sports versus politics, like in general, you try to keep them separate, but particularly in the fighting, the politics took the fighters. They took Amosov, they took Usyk, they took Lomachenko, they took the Klitschkos. They took thousands of fighters that could have gone on to great things, but may die now in a war that we'll never get to see. So I think that's an important one to make. In regards to the fights themselves, 165 world champion. It's got to be the only one. It's they can claim a world championship there. But if I agree. If Kevin Lee doesn't win this and win it well, what's the point? What's the point of doing anything?
I think it's smart that they're doing 165 though. At the same time, I always thought Bellator should have done a cruiserweight division, because it's so many lads there that were like, Bader and Rampage and Tito and even Phil Davis and Nimkov and loads of these lads could fight at like 235, and you'd have a division and a world champion that the UFC don't have. I always thought they should have done that, and I think it's kind of smart for Eagle FC. Even as Spencer said, there is another 165 fight in this. I was doing it my preview yesterday, and I think that maybe there's even 2 on it. So I'm sure they'll make fights there, but I think it's smart to do it anyway. Bellator.
Sean, before you go, Andy, that Ray Borg versus Bandeas. What's your thoughts on that fight?
Bandeas is like a plus 465 underdog in that, and that's my flyer bet of the week this week in Sherlock. I think Ray Borg will win the fight if it goes to decision. If it goes 14 minutes, I think he'll have won those 14 minutes. But I think Bandeas could hit him and fucking finish him at any stage. We've seen that with Bandeas. Look what he did to James Gallagher. Look what he did to Franz Malambo in a fight he was losing as well. Like, Ricky is one of those guys. He might show up and he might lose and he might look terrible, but he might show up, he might be losing and then fucking win, or he might show up and he might look great and win. Like, Ricky's a talented guy. It's just, sometimes it's a bad matchup, or sometimes he just doesn't show up. But when he does show up, when he is in the right frame of mind, and like I think he'll be getting paid pretty well for this, and I think he might be in a good state of mind. I wouldn't rule him out. I think that's a good fight. What do you think?
Yeah, I
it's
think
not
it's
like
good.
Ray Borg is averse to turning up inconsistent either.
Did he make weight?
Yeah,
Ray
that's the
Borg
big
could
thing.
step on a plug on the way to the cage and
Like
get the fight
and I mean,
cancelled.
look, he had a lot of things that he went through with his son, with Anthony, and that put a lot of strain on him and put a lot of, makes it hard to focus on fighting when you've got actual battles at home. But he's not a guy that, like you saying that betting line number is, I wouldn't make Ray Borg that big of a favorite over many people.
That betting line is crazy. I was confused when I seen Bandeas on this card because I remember Franz Malambo talking to Graham on the 10 years of Severe, talking about fighting Ricky Bandeas in Combatche Global. So who knows what's going on?
Campbell McLaren, though, come on, like does
Yeah.
that man even know what a contract is?
Yeah, it's probably true.
Hi, Campbell. Oh yeah,
he knows what a block button is, though.
He loves me, though. He'd never block me. Although he did, he took a shot at me there a couple of times. But anyway, fuck it, be grand.
Like Bandeas has fought the last 3 times in Combatche, so I don't know whether his contract is up now or whether Campbell is letting him fight everywhere and anywhere. So we never know what happens.
Campbell's a nice guy. He'd let people fight. What do you think of Barrocks versus Barnell in the main event? Not the strongest main event, but a fucking fun fight. I think it's very interesting. It reminds me a little bit of RDA versus Moicano, or the fight that I thought we were going to get with that, where Barrocks is kind of long on the outside. We'll be trying to keep him at range, and Burnell will be trying to get inside, get a takedown, get the submission, I think. What do you think, Ian? Like, we've watched a lot of Burnell in UFC and in Cage Warriors and stuff. I'd favour him, but Barrocks is dangerous as well. He's one of those guys that can land a flying knee and fucking knock you out.
Yeah, we spoke about it on the Chase and Pack a little bit, and we kind of agreed, and we think that if Mads Burnell can kind of close the distance and stay out of the dangerous, Boric can throw some good knees, he can throw some good uppercuts, he's got some good power. But if Mads Burnell can kind of get around all of that, get the fight to the ground, I can see him getting maybe a late stoppage or definitely winning a decision in this fight.
What do you think, Shawnee?
Yeah, I think Mads Burnell sort of masters that type of Viking style of MMA fighter where they absolutely smother you. They just come and plunder all your strength and they drag you to the ground, and then they'll sort of choke you out or whatever. Like, I think Mads Burnell just knows how to get you down regardless of where you are. He'll find a way. Borch, he's also very, very good, but I think he's a bit more flashy and he relies a bit more on the big shots to change things. I think, like, if you're going into a 3-round fight, this might be a 5-round fight.
Yeah, it is. Only the second one.
He's maybe a bit too happy to, if he does get taken down, as to wait it out and then wait for it to either be stood up or the start of the next round so he can go on the offensive again. Like, I think he might wait too long, but I think it's a bit of a tee up for Burnell. I think the style of the fight is going to suit him. He's going to manage to get him down, and there's nobody worse than Mads Burnell on top of you. It's going to be dangerous.
I would tend to agree. Spencer, how do you see it? And is there anything on the undercard at 6? I know there's some good Johnny Eblin 10-0, Roman Cotton Ramiro Cotton, coming back after a while out. Fernaldo as well is on this undercard at 6-0, and Cody Law at 5-0. We saw him a couple of weeks ago. It feels like not too long ago. Some very good prospects on this undercard, and a good main event as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised when Mads Burnell got let go by the UFC. I thought that never should have happened. It felt pretty quick to me. 3 fights, was winning the Arnold Allen fight until he lost it at the last moment, because Arnold Allen does Arnold Allen things. I like this card. I mean, I'm never a big Bellator backer, because there's a lot of Bellator matchmaking that is happening, and it's still happening here, as we've got with some of these prospects. But I like seeing Johnny Eblin get it right. Like, this is we figure out if Johnny Eblin's legit or not, because John Salter, we know his level. Interested to see JJ Wilson at lightweight after missing weight at featherweight, I think 3-4 times in a row. Good prospect there. You mentioned Ramiro Cotton. He's another one of those quality wrestlers that they bring in that let's see what they can get to. Cody Law, unbeaten. Like, it's a pretty solid card top to bottom. And it kind of sucks that it's going to get overshadowed by everything else that's going on. Kind of sucks that people don't recognize how good Mads Burnell is. I forget who I was talking with before. saying like if Mads Burnell's your best option as the next featherweight contender, it's like that's a pretty good option. Like Mads Burnell's really tough. He's really good. He's got what 5 straight wins now since being cut by the UFC. A bunch of them are finishes. A couple of them are Japanese neckties. Like this is a dangerous dude, and so it's a good card. It's interesting to see, and I think the 5 rounds favors him for sure.
Ian, what you think? Take us away out.
Yeah, I think you mentioned Roman Feraldo, who had a sensational flying knee knockout in his last fight. It was the one where he kind of hurt the guy on the feet, pointed at him, and then went and just flying kneed him into hell. That's something that I'm looking forward to. He's going to be exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing him getting in there as well. The main event is a super interesting contest for me. I'm looking forward to also to seeing JJ Wilson. And yeah, I just, I don't want to end on a negative note, but yeah, I wish that this wasn't on at the same time as the UFC. Come on, Bellator, help us out here. Put it on a Friday. Even put it on a Sunday if you want. Just make sure that they don't clash. Shawnee doesn't want it on the Sunday. Let's go with the Friday night.
Put it on Saturday, be grand.
Yeah, we'll watch it. We'll watch it. We'll have to break the 2 TVs out at the same time and stuff like that. But that rounds us all. We've covered it all this Thursday night. We've covered it all. UFC, Eagle FC, Bellator. Thanks to everyone for joining us tonight and for listening and for watching. Follow Spencer Kite at Spencer Kite on Twitter. Follow Sean Denny at Denny Rants. Sorry, Harry Powell, who's left us, at BJJ_Harry Powell. Follow me at O'Neill MMA. Don't bother following Sean Sheehan at Sean Sheehan Ba on Twitter. He has enough fucking followers.
Too many.
and go head on over to All Real Nutrition. EatAllReal.com. Enter the code word SevereMMA and get yourself some delicious Eat All Real protein bars. The nicest protein bars on the market. Head on over there. SevereMMA, 15% off. Thanks on head on. Hey, Sean has the wizardry up again. Get that QR code up in the top right hand corner. Scan it. Head on over to the Patreon. We've got the Speakers Corner. We've got the Chasing Pack. We've got some career retros. Spencer hops on. He does the State of the UFC, which is one of the best podcasts that you can listen to. Speakers Corner is unbelievable. The Chasing Pack is good. I mean, we cover it all. Why am I downplaying it? The Chasing Pack is fucking brilliant. That's mine. I just need to be humble, but go on, Sean. See us out here.
God, good luck, lads. We'll see you all. God bless. Enjoy the fights.
Like, subscribe. Good luck.